And my friends, I have some frightening news regarding what's going on, this current movement to outlaw abortion with these laws where even in cases of rape and incest, nope, sorry, you're SOL. Very, very frightening. I'm, hello to Chris Rose. I am pro-choice, a bit tepidly so. And I say that only because, I have my own misgivings about it. And before we get to this story I'm about to share with you, actually, you know what? I'm going to save that for later. I heard something earlier today that was very interesting to me and surprised me a bit. But let's open with this, because I do have something truly shocking connected to this whole thing, and it's of great concern to me personally, as you could imagine, as someone who is pro-choice. And I've always fundamentally been pro-choice. But according to Rick Wiles, and this is from my favorite website, and hopefully yours, rightwingwatch.org, and you'll understand when I explain this why this is of such great concern to me personally. According to Rick Wiles, who's the End Times broadcaster, he hosts a show ironically titled True News, etc. We've talked about him many, many times on the show. He says that those who support reproductive rights will be, quote, aborted continuously by demons in hell. Now, I must tell you, my friends, again, I am pro-choice, but I am a little bit concerned about the idea of being aborted continuously by demons in hell. This is not something I'm entirely comfortable with. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, Matt, if you're pro-choice, you gotta stick to that. You gotta stick to your guns. And I am pro-Second Amendment as well. But you gotta stick to your guns and, and continue to, you gotta stand by your principles and continue to advocate for your position regardless of the consequences. And don't back down. And don't allow these people to threaten you, to demonize you, literally in this case, and to try to get you to back down, like the great Tom Petty song, I Won't Back Down. Many of you might be saying that. Well, those who agree with me and take the same position as I do might be saying that right now. But to you, I say, easy for you to say. How would you like to be repeatedly aborted by demons in hell? I mean, that's a lot to take in. I have to ask myself, is this really my hill to die on, so to speak? I know I'm mixing metaphors, but and I'm anti-war. But the point is, I'm a little concerned about this being continuously aborted by demons in hell thing. It's one thing to... I'm willing to advocate for positions. I'm willing to vote, for certain people who I feel advocate those positions and so forth. But this whole thing sounds like it's a bit much even for me. I mean, I like to think I'm a strong person, but what if I don't have that same strength in the afterlife and I have to go through this? What Rick Wiles is claiming. I mean, this is genuinely frightening to me, my friends. So, Fred says. So does that include senators that voted to starve and bomb children in Yemen? I very much doubt it includes them, Fred. I get the impression, and we'll listen to this audio together, and we'll hear Rick Wiles explain himself. There's about 2 minutes of audio here, so we'll be able to. Maybe it'll give us a more fuller picture, and we can kind of flesh this out a little bit. But my assumption is that Rick Wiles is probably pretty okay with the starving and bombing of children in Yemen. I'm assuming that Rick Wiles probably doesn't mind that too much and doesn't mind senators voting for that. Because, I mean, look, the kids in Yemen, I mean, really, I mean... I know in theory we're all God's children, quote unquote, but, this is America. We kind of count a little more, right? I mean, we are God's favorite. I mean, I think that's why we're a Christian nation, right? Fred says, I figure if God's chosen people are okay with it, it's okay with me. Oh, and then there's Oh, and then there's Fred shared a link in the Facebook, which is we'll see if it'll open on my browser. My browser is running a little funny. Oh, I think this is actually going to open. Because he shared a link from timesofisrael.com, and Israel has a pretty liberal abortion policy. But this is America, Fred. This is America, and we, that's other people's kids. So anyway, I think we should actually, the link is taking its sweet time opening, but we'll see. Because I do want to look at that. You know what? I'm going to try opening it in Firefox. I know it's fascinating listening to me talking about doing this and doing that with the computer. But anyway, while that opens, here we go. Yep. It opened in Firefox. This is dated. We'll look at this quickly, and then we'll get to, just for context, and then we'll get to the audio from Rick Wiles, because I am concerned about what's going to happen to me in the afterlife. Forgive me if I sound selfish. I still care about women's reproductive rights. I promise you I do, but I gotta, this has me kind of looking at things a little different, this idea of being continuously aborted by demons in hell. But, this is from back in 2014. Israel's abortion law, now among the world's most liberal. Despite its conservative leanings, government approves free pregnancy termination for nearly all women, and it barely causes a ripple. Israel, a nation with a forceful religious lobby and a conservative prime minister, is poised to offer its female citizens some of the most liberal abortion coverage in the world. The nation's health ministry commission, led by Dr. Yonatan Halevi, last week announced its state-subsidized health basket, the package of medications and services that all Israel's citizens are entitled to under the nation's healthcare system. Sounds like Israel treats healthcare as a right instead of a privilege. Imagine that. It was approved by the cabinet on Sunday. The health basket is analyzed and amended on its annual basis, and among the many additional treatments to be offered to Israelis in 2014 are free-of-charge abortions for women ages 20 to 33. I wonder why 20 to 33. That's interesting. Gia says... Science is out, crusades are in, America 2019. Oh, science schmience, Gia, how dare you? Science it's like sorcery. I mean, you can do pretty terrible things with, in the name of science. For example, Satan puts these dinosaur fossils on Earth, and then, all these quote-unquote scientists think there's, the Earth is billions of years old or some crazy thing like that. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, I hope people realize I'm being sarcastic. Sometimes I get worried that, somebody brand new is going to be listening going, really, Matt? Matt is this guy's a creationist? No. I am a great purveyor of sarcasm and ridicule. All right, but I am genuinely concerned about this. Let's hear what Rick Wiles has to say about those who support reproductive rights, and this may apply to many of you. And I don't want to see any of you, to have this happen to you at the hands of demons in hell. So let's hear what he has to say. I'm sure this will be informative.
Please show me in the Constitution. Where is the clause in the Constitution that says a woman has the right to murder an innocent baby? A bunch of reprobates on the Supreme Court declared that a constitutional right to murder babies exists in our Constitution. There is no such right.
Well, that's quite the framing of it. That's not really what this is about. But, and by the way, something doesn't have to be in the Constitution for it to. This is a kind of a pet peeve of mine, and I am going to back this up to the beginning because we're fairly early in this audio, and I do want to take the whole thing in again, partly for selfish reasons. But people often conflate what is unconstitutional, because it sounds like he's making an argument that abortion is unconstitutional. I think that's what he's trying to say. He's putting a little bit of a different spin on it, and he's being very harsh with it. But people conflate unconstitutional with non-constitutional. So unconstitutional is something that directly violates the Constitution, at least by, Matt's definitions. Non-constitutional would be something that is not in the Constitution, but it doesn't violate the Constitution either. And there's all kinds of things that are non-constitutional, but, I don't think, for just a random example, I don't think there's anything in the Constitution about an interstate highway system, but we have one. It's not unconstitutional. No one's saying that having an interstate highway system violates the Constitution in some way. But you could argue it's non-constitutional. It's not in the Constitution. I don't think there's any, there might be something about right to travel in the Constitution, but I don't think there's anything in the Constitution that says, the country is to have these minimum 2 lanes in either direction highways that connect the entire country. I don't think that's in there anywhere, but we have it. Anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, but it just reminded me, it's kind of a pet peeve that I have. When people make these arguments about what's in the Constitution, what's not in the Constitution, that's one of the things I run into a lot. There's all kinds of things you could argue are non-constitutional, but some people who are very, very anti-government to the extreme, like anarchists, they'll argue that everything's unconstitutional. Not literally everything, but all the things they don't like. Oh, those are unconstitutional. Well, some of these things, I'm open-minded. Maybe there is something here that is unconstitutional, but most of these things are non-constitutional, but they don't violate the Constitution, so STFU about it. All right, starting this over.
Where is the clause in the Constitution that says a woman has the right to murder an innocent baby? A bunch of reprobates on the Supreme Court declared that a constitutional right to murder babies exists in our Constitution.
Being a bit hyperbolic there. Just in case anyone isn't clear, no one literally said that. No one has literally said that, by the way. Pretty sure. Just pointing that out.
There is no such right.
Not a single place.
There is no such federal law. The Congress has never passed an abortion law. It's never happened.
Right.
Judges on the Supreme Court who defied the living God decided that they would legalize the slaughter of babies in this country. Those judges, some of them, I guess all of them by now, are dead. And their carcasses will burn in hell forever. I personally believe that abortionists and those who fight for abortion, I believe that after you die and after the judgment of Almighty God on Judgment Day, I believe that abortionists and the supporters of abortion, I believe that their punishment in the lake of fire will be to be aborted continuously by demons.
Wow.
Continuous, perpetual, eternal abortion.
I'm not sure how that would work. And would this, I'm confused about some of the details here. I don't mean to nitpick, but we are talking about what's going to happen to those of us who are pro-choice in the afterlife. So I think it's relevant. And I don't mean to belabor it or dwell on it, but, none of us are going to live forever. Is this going to be happening in the lake? He mentioned the lake of fire. So is it going to be happening in the lake of fire? Is that where this re-abortion happens to your eternal carcass or something? I'm a little bit confused. I don't, and maybe I've misunderstood something. I wouldn't think you would have an actual carcass in the afterlife. My impression, and again, none of us really know. We don't know until the moment that we cross over into the great beyond. My impression has always been that your carcass, referring, of course, to your dead body, kind of stays here. Like that's going to stay here and decompose like Easy G's dead Uncle Al, or if you're cremated, you get all burnt up. But so if that stays here, I'm not sure why it would be there and just continuing to burn. And it sounds like it's going to burn for eternity, but I don't think it works that way. So I'm a little bit confused here. Now, the devil is in the details in this case, quite literally, I suppose, but this is all very confusing. I might have to back that up a little bit because, again, we are talking about, this, if this is true, if this is all true, this is very concerning. Maybe I've misunderstood something here and it's not as bad as I think. This whole lake of fire thing, though, sounds terrifying. I'm an excellent swimmer, but still, I don't know if I want to be in the lake of fire.
And those who fight for abortion,
yes,
I believe that after you die and after the judgment of Almighty God on Judgment Day, I believe that abortionists and the supporters of abortion, I believe that their punishment in the lake of fire will be to be aborted continuously by demons.
Wow.
Continuous, perpetual, eternal abortion.
And by the way, it seems to me that in order for that to happen, you would have to be born over and over again, or not quite born. This doesn't quite add up. I don't know if Rick Wiles is quite clear on all the details here. We'll listen to the rest of that in a moment, but let's see in the Facebook live chat. Let's see. Gia says, "Put me in a cage and let the birds peck off my flesh." Oh my goodness, Gia. I don't know if you mean for that to occur while you're here on Earth. I would hope not, or if that's kind of an afterlife thing. You think when you're in the afterlife, maybe that's something that would happen in the lake of fire. Fred says sorcery is enough to get you beheaded in Saudi Arabia. Yes, that is true. Fred says, well, if life begins at conception, child support should too, right? What do you mean, Fred? Oh my goodness, I don't think too many conservatives would agree with you there. Gia says, Fred, yep, women need to lock it up unless there is a pre-intercourse contract outlining responsibilities in event of unwanted pregnancy. Yes. Jenny is here.
Wait a minute. We want contracts now?
Well, Gia is just making a suggestion.
Really? You want a contract for dating?
Well, she may have been kidding because she was also talking about birds pecking her flesh, which I can't imagine she's serious about that.
Why can't you imagine that's serious?
Because that sounds horrifying. I'll tell you what.
What do you mean horrifying?
If birds came to peck at my flesh, I'd be like, get out of here, birds.
What you don't know, what happens when you're sleeping.
Well, I'm pretty sure I'd wake up, but
I don't know.
I'm
You're
worried
a pretty
about
deep sleeper.
I'm worried about birds pecking my flesh in the lake of hell. That's what I'm worried about.
So you're saying that you got that one-way ticket to hell now, huh?
Well, according to Rick Wiles, I do.
Are you guys supposed to hang out somewhere for a while or something?
Purgatory?
Oh yeah, that.
I was raised Catholic. He didn't say anything about purgatory. Well, no, purgatory is if you're on your way to heaven. If you're pro-choice, you're going straight to hell, according to Rick Wiles.
Oh, okay.
Straight to the lake of fire.
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Wow, yeah.
Tell that to the 11-year-old
That
pregnant
doc.
girl.
I'm just sitting here.
Think about a demon with scalpels, scissors, cutting your spinal cord.
Again and again.
And again.
Crushing your skull.
Crushing your skull, ripping your heart out, using a vacuum cleaner to suck your organs out. And then...
No, I'm still...
Oh my God, that's disgusting.
I'm still very confused about something, though. So this means that in the afterlife, you still have your physical body to have all these things happen to you? I mean, I think Rick Wiles is burying the lead here. He's talking about what happens to people who are pro-choice in the afterlife. But, I mean, this is quite a stunning revelation. No pun intended, I promise, in and of itself. Apparently, according to Rick Wiles, in the afterlife, when you go to the lake of fire, you still have your spinal cord and your body and your skull and everything. I thought you couldn't take it with you.
So wait,
apparently you do. You take it all with you.
What happens if part of you gets lost along the way? Like, what if you have an amputation and lose a foot? Does that mean in the afterlife you're footless? I thought you got it back.
Probably.
I thought that was like, boing, it's back.
Not in the lake of fire. You don't. In the lake of fire, it's the lake of fire. It's
so
hell.
then, what do you have a stump forever and all eternity?
I
never
guess
get
so.
It back? That's rotten.
You probably have
geez, I'm kind of looking forward to being able to be freely moving when that comes. I figure I get that back.
You probably have demons making fun of you, calling you Stumpy or something.
Look, I know all about that crazy exorcist guy that you've been following, and you're not bringing that into our house. No.
Bringing what? I don't understand.
Exorcist of any kind into our home.
Why?
I saw you following those. I saw you posting those videos. I've seen you talking about it and following it, and I'm starting to wonder about you a little bit there.
Well,
going off the reservation or something. I don't know.
I am pro-choice. Maybe I need an exorcist to save me from the lake of fire.
Demons will come and get you.
That's what I'm worried about.
Now you need is the demon. Inside joke for those who don't know.
Yes.
And it all goes back together, and they do it again.
Maybe the demon even whispers, "You're not really a person. You're not really a person.
You're not a person. That's right. You have no rights." And this goes on for billions of years, hundreds of billions of years, billions of years, and it never stops. It never stops. You will be aborted continuously forever.
So either one of two things. He somehow knows this. Perhaps he was told this by the Lord. Or this is just his own fantasy that he's come up with, which would mean he's a very deeply disturbed man.
I don't know who's disturbed around here.
Because that was very descriptive of Rick Wiles to come up with all that. Very descriptive.
Disgusting and inappropriate, and not even close to being accurate, but okay.
Very descriptive.
Gross. Just really gross.
Yeah.
Whose brain works like that to think of that in the first place?
Well,
you got to think that way first.
His heart's in the right place. He's just
really?
He's trying
Are
to.
You sure?
He's trying to save the babies.
I think he's living in a Stephen King novel.
He believes life begins at conception. By the way, that's the new line I've noticed among pro-lifers.
I still want somebody to explain how they're going to implant babies.
Well, the new line now is that science has proven life begins at conception. I mean, they've always said life begins at conception, but now they're saying science has proven it. I've heard that over and over again, and I'm like, where? This is why they think Plan B causes an abortion. The abortion with the morning after pill, which it doesn't. But
the unintended consequences that are going to occur as a fallout from this are horrific and life-threatening. And so many people are so full of themselves and their beliefs that they don't want to hear the science, they don't want to know the truth, and they're not going to listen to the truth.
Right. I was very surprised this afternoon. I heard, I don't know who it was, because I caught it mid-conversation, but there was a pro-life activist in Alabama who really surprised me, though. He said something. So one of my arguments has always been that if you want to, if you want to get rid of abortion, the correct thing to do is to keep doing what we've been doing, but do more of it, because steadily, year after year, decade after decade, the rate of unwanted pregnancy has been dropping. The rate of teen pregnancy has been dropping. And the rate of abortion has been steadily dropping. And pro-lifers don't like to talk about any of that usually because it contradicts their narrative, because they're very much into this, no, you need abstinence-only education, all this stuff that doesn't work. But I actually heard a pro-lifer say, it was interesting because I'd never heard a pro-lifer say this before, but he tried to turn it around into making it into a pro-life argument. He said himself during this interview that I heard on NPR, he said, well, yeah, because he was asked the question, aren't you worried about going back to a time of, the back alley abortions and all this, or when a woman would perforate her uterus with a coat hanger. Forgive me for being graphic, but that's what used to go on. And his response was, no, because demand for abortion is going away anyway. And then he cited the same statistics I just did, and it was kind of jarring a little bit to hear a pro-lifer say those very things that they don't usually, because I've said that to pro-life, like on a certain show that I used to be the co-host on. I would get into these conversations on that show with pro-lifers all the time. And I would say things like, well, you do realize that as we increase education and as we increase access to contraception, the rate of unwanted pregnancy has been dropping. The rate of teen pregnancy has been dropping. The rate of abortion has been dropped. Since Roe v. Wade, the rate of abortion has been on a steady decline over the decades. And these people would look me right in the face and say, I don't believe any of those numbers. Those can't possibly be right. It's like, oh my God, those are the government's own numbers. So to actually hear a pro-lifer say that out loud, everything I just said was I was like, whoa, really? Did he really just say that? But of course, apparently this is the new way. This is the new tactic now. They can't run from those facts anymore. So now they're just going to spin them into, well, the demand for abortion is dropping, so we might as well just go ahead and outlaw it now. Which is obviously going to backfire.
In so many ways, and in some very horrific ways. And what people don't think about are those horrific cases. Now, I don't want you to get me wrong. Me personally, I don't believe in abortion as a form of birth control.
Of course not.
You know, but
no, nobody does.
As the conversations are starting to happen, the other side of the coin is these are the same people that are trying to feed you the line about not, we shouldn't allow young ladies to have, menstruation pads or tampons available to them within the school. That's the same people that have the pro-life narrative, the same people that are trying to keep that out of the schools. And these are people that are so backwards. They don't want to have honest conversations with kids. And the bottom line is the more honest conversations, I agree with you, that we have with kids, the more that we're open about how their bodies work, how they scientifically function. How does your body function? I remember when I was a young lady, a very young age. In my case, I was not educated appropriately. And I suffered through a lot to understand being a young lady and dealing with the simple fact of menstruation. And I was not taught appropriately, but now we are. That reduces the rate of unwanted pregnancies. The access to having birth control, to understanding how birth control works. These kids are smart. They know that condoms do not protect them against sexually transmitted diseases entirely. They're smart. They get this. They know that the timing method doesn't work. They know that if they don't...
The rhythm method.
Yeah, the rhythm method, whatever the heck.
That's a big Catholic thing.
You know, these kids are smarter
That's
now.
why you see these very large Catholic families.
Well, and in my own faith, having a large family is usually predominant in people who are very Orthodox. You know, and there's families like mine and my dad's that didn't have a lot of kids. And that doesn't matter. What matters is how we educate our young. And the more we educate them, the better. My generation wasn't taught as well. The generations that are existing now are being taught better, and they're being taught from a no-nonsense perspective. They're not talking down to them like little kids, you know. They're like, hee, hee, hee. There's less of that, and there's more quality conversation, I think, going on. I know that when my kid went through health education, he came home, and I'll never forget it, and he'll shoot me for ever saying this, but his health teacher did such an excellent job of educating them. He came home and had an honest discussion about sexually transmitted diseases and expressed his desire to wait to go that far, to not want to go that far, because he wasn't ready to deal with those risks. And that came from a real conversation. We don't have real conversations. We have more pregnancy.
I've told this little anecdote many times on the show, but I'll repeat it because it's certainly relevant now. One of the times that Rick Perry ran for president, I forget if it was the first time or the second time, because I think he's run twice. I know he's run at least, I think he's only run twice is what I mean. He did this question and answer thing, I think it was at some university in Texas, and he was asked about at the time, he was still governor at the time, and he was asked about their abstinence-only policy in terms of education. No sex ed in Texas schools, abstinence only, that was the policy. And he was asked about this, and he said, well, that's what works. It clearly works. And then the interviewer said to him, well, you do realize that Texas has the strictest abstinence-only policy in the country and the highest rate of teen pregnancy in the country. So
exactly.
Apparently it doesn't work. And his answer was just something like, well, I know abstinence works. And he really didn't have an answer. He just kind of,
you know how abstinence works? By educating them to want to choose that for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
That's what works.
Yeah.
Educating them and giving them materials, not closing the door and saying, I'm not going to, no, don't look in there. It's scary.
And that reminds me, too, of another positive trend. The rate at which the median age at which teenagers are first engaging in sexual behavior has gone up.
Yes. Yeah.
Kids are waiting more and more now to have sex.
They get the consequences better than our generation did.
Another positive trend, which is a result of educating these kids. But
beside that fact, we also have to consider the medical ramifications. One of the worst stories I ever heard about a state that had too tight of an abortion law involved a woman who was pregnant with a child she very much wanted. In fact, it was would have been her third. And unfortunately, somewhere around the period of about 6 months or so, they lost the child. For whatever reason, the child passed away in utero. And the doctor said, nature will take its course. And they assured her that. And so she was sent home to go through the natural process of miscarriage and then to come to the hospital when that was going to happen. And the thing about it is that 2 weeks went by and she didn't miscarry. 2 weeks of literally walking around feeling like she was a coffin for her infant.
Yeah.
She actually used that term.
That's brutal.
And her husband had to bring her to another state in order for them to go in and do what needed to be done to keep the mother from getting sick from sepsis or something of infection, but also to save her sanity.
Yeah.
She was absolutely losing her mind.
Yeah.
I will finish the story by saying that she did go on to have another child later in life. And it had 3 beautiful children that were very healthy and very beautiful. But no one should be forced by law to go through that kind of suffering and pain.
Yeah.
Because the law was crafted so narrowly, it negated any of those possibilities. And when it happens once, it can happen again. Mm-hmm. And it does happen. People lose their children every day to miscarriage. And not everybody can go through that process naturally. People have things wrong with their bodies that get in the way.
Yeah.
Do we really want to make people suffer? I don't think that's the intent.
Right.
But that's the unintended consequences of narrowly tapered laws that don't consider any of the unintended consequences.
Right.
And in medicine, there are a lot.